House today. How exciting. This is the third uh, presentation in our social media one-on-one series. Um, and I feel like our attendance just keeps getting higher and higher each one. I'm looking at these numbers, so that's exciting. But my name is Lori Pogue. I am the NCIT social media manager, and today we are going to be talking about crisis communications, how to respond effectively on social media when trust is at stake. As we are getting started, if you don't mind just dropping your organization in the chat as well, because I always like to see who we have here with us. It's always good to use. We start our examples and other things. So we're going to dive right in. Angie, you can go to the next slide. All right. So today we're going to talk about crisis communications. What is crisis communications? Crisis communication is the strategic process of responding to an unexpected event that could impact your organization's trust, reputation, operations, or relationship with the public. In simple, it's how we inform, respond, and reassure when something goes wrong or is perceived to have gone wrong. Go to the next slide. Now let's talk about why this matters for our work. In a crisis, trust can be lost quickly. Because our work impacts children and families, emotions run high, and public trust is essential. For some of us, our audience includes parents, caregivers, providers and educators, policymakers, funders, media, community partners. And the goal of crisis communication is to protect trust, to provide accurate information, to reduce harm and confusion, and to show accountability and care. And most importantly, to keep children and families at the center of the response. We go to the next slide. So let's talk about what a crisis can look like for us. When we think about crisis communications in our field, a crisis doesn't always have to be a large scale emergency, right? Most crises often begin with a smaller issue that gains attention quickly and it will explode on social media. For organizations focused on families and children, this may look like misinformation about, child health topics, backlash to a campaign or a policy message, or a post that's misunderstood and has gone viral. It can also involve staff or a partner issue that has become public, child privacy concerns, media coverage that creates confusion or negative attention. And the key point is that the crisis is often defined less by the event itself and more by its impact on the trust, reputation, and public perception. Um, a lot of our organizations, the work is mission driven. And so protecting credibility with the families that we work with and the communities are always important. And so just even looking at this list here, I have like the scales here looking at, what's fact versus what's fake. So, you always want to look at that as we start to think about what crisis can look like for our organizations. We can go to the next slide, Angie. So before a crisis ever occurs, most organizations should have some pre-work done to prepare. Um, you know, Crisis comms isn't something that you can create in the moment. It's something that you have to build in advance. Um, it's important that, we continue to keep trust, which is our most valuable asset. When something goes wrong, people expect us to respond quickly, clearly, and compassionately. And some of the things that should be in place could be a pre approved response template. So, just in case like this is something that could happen, or prepare if it does, so you already know what your response would be to that. Um, you need to have a clear internal approval chain, so you know, like, if something happens, who has to sign off on your statement, and do they know that they have to sign off on it? So if something happens, you need to be able to contact them, or they should be anticipating your call. And so, you definitely want to make sure that the right people are alerted in your organization. It's also important to know who your spokespersons are ahead of time, so that way they're not caught off guard. It could be something where, in one of the jobs that I had to keep a change of clothes with a blazer in my office just in case, I had to be the spokesperson for the organization. So even if it was casual Friday, I was ready to go in case they needed me. And so, having monitoring tools as well is really important because you need to be able to have a system to monitor your social media accounts so that way you can catch issues early on before they happen. Um, how many of you have heard of Google Alerts? This is a way that you can go in and put in keywords about your organization. And if, it starts trending or something is going viral related to your organization based off of the keywords that you've provided, you will get notified from Google Alerts. There are also some other monitoring systems like Meltwater and, a few other Hootsuite and some other platforms that you can enroll in that will do that for you. But that is definitely something that you need to look into. And then finally, being aligned with your partners if something happens, like with our organization of NCIT, where we have lots of partners, it's very important that if something were to happen, that we are able to email our partners and let them know about the crisis that is taking place and if it will impact them and others. So just so we can coordinate and keep the message consistent. So the goal is just to be prepared when the crisis happens. So you're not reacting in panic, but you are responding with purpose. Next slide, please. All right, so let's talk about some social media challenges. So, social media can be your best friend or it can be your worst enemy here. It's very valuable when you are communicating during a crisis, but it also can create some unique challenges for you. Information spreads fast, and we know this, and people begin forming opinions before all of the facts are known, and misinformation can travel fast, especially, in an emergency, if it's an emotional topic. That is involving family and children, and there also is pressure to respond immediately, and so while timely communication is important, you don't want to respond too fast without having accurate information, and because that could open up a whole nother can of worms. And also remember this, screenshots last forever on somebody's phone. So, that is another challenge. You really want to be careful how you're responding because you would hate for someone to circulate a screenshot long after the moment has passed of how you responded. So, that's why you need to have a good balance of, speed, accuracy, empathy, strategy, all at the same time. So I know many of you probably heard about the White House press dinner from the other night. And as information was rolling out, I was on Threads and I was on Twitter X looking at, the images and the pictures that were coming through from people who were inside of the dinner and some people who were outside of the dinner. And it just amazed me to get all of these different viewpoints from this one dinner. And so someone had posted a video of this man sitting there eating his dinner while all all, everything was breaking out in the room. And so that was one person's perspective, that he was unbothered. And then there was another person crawling under the table. And then there was another man that was helping his wife out of the room. But on social media, they had turned it into him using his wife as a shield. So, you know, this is a great example of their being able to control the narrative, but also knowing that no matter what you put out and no matter what happens, people are going to also come up with their own narratives too. So that is something to keep in mind, that you want to be able to control that, and you can do that by the information that you put out online. Just want to make sure everybody is seeing the slides good. I was looking in the comments. Okay, I think we're good. All right, so we'll keep going here. Let's talk about some do's and don'ts with crisis comes on the next slide here. All right, so do's. So you want to lead with empathy. You want to, uh, let's see here. Okay, I just want to make sure everybody can see it. I was reading the comments here. We good. You want to center with children and families. You want to only share verified facts. You want to coordinate with your leadership of your organization and also your legal team. Never be afraid to share something with them, just make sure that we're all on the same page. You want to pause any unrelated scheduled posts, and we'll talk about this in the next couple of slides. But, if, for example, someone in your organization was found to be misappropriating funds, you don't want to send out a message about that and then in 5 minutes later have a scheduled post about a fundraiser that's happening tomorrow. So you want to be mindful of what messaging you're putting out in the times of crisis. You want to also monitor the comments closely. We'll talk about that here in the next couple of slides too. And you want to update consistently so people know what is going on. Let's talk about the don'ts. You do not want to debate angry commenters. One rule that I always think about, especially when managing social media, is you might be the only person that sees that comment, but everyone can see your response to that comment. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to shame any of your followers or parents or caregivers. You don't want to react emotionally. Stop and think before you tweet or post. You do not want to post before you've had internal alignment on what your stance is going to be. You don't want to ignore misinformation. You want to continue you don't want to continue cheerful content during a tragedy. We just kind of spoke about that, to be mindful of the situation and kind of read the room and what's going on. And then you don't want to forget about accessibility and captions and using plain language. The training that we did last time, we just talked about, even, with your messaging, you don't want to jumble it all up with a bunch of complicated words. You just want things to be able to be understood as easy as possible. All right, going on to the next slide. So let's talk about the first hour, the first 60 minutes. The first 60 minutes of a crisis is the most important because it can shape how the situation unfolds publicly. During this time, it's important to stay calm, to gather all the facts, to alert the appropriate people on your team. And this is also when, like I said, you need to stop any of your scheduled content, just so, it doesn't appear as if you are ignoring what is happening or you're being disconnected or insensitive. Social media should be monitored closely to understand what is being said. I even look at it like, when we were younger and I was in elementary school and we had a classroom pet and we would do fire drills. One person in the class was assigned to be the door opener. One person was assigned to get the classroom guinea pig, so nothing would happen to it. But everybody has a job. So even if you have the capacity on your team to have someone on your team to say, okay, we have a crisis going on. We just need for you to monitor what is being said for us, and that way you can assess any misinformation that might be developing. But it's nothing wrong with assigning tasks in a crisis and knowing who's going to do what. And, just to remember, even if you don't have all of the answers, you should begin preparing some type of holding statement that acknowledges that you know what is happening and communicates, we have more information or this story is developing, or, just to let your followers know what is going on. And just keep in mind too, a thoughtful first response can build trust. While if you delay responding, it can cause confusion and make the situation worse and make people lean to others on social media for information about what may be happening in your organization that might not be true. Okay. So we'll keep on to the next slide. Let's talk about when to pause content. So you want to pause content, if there's community tragedy, if some type of sensitive national event happening, if there's an organizational controversy, some type of staff misconduct, public backlash, if you do have posts, if you're using, and I say pause content, if you are using some type of post app that can schedule your post, or any type of system that might be sending them out automatically, you want to go in and cut that off. That way, you can be in control of the messaging during your time of crisis. If you normally do like some type of, I don't know, um, you know, it could be like a joke Tuesday where you tell a joke every Tuesday at 2 o'clock or something for your organization. You want to cut that off because you don't want someone thinking, oh, they're joking during this, emergency that's happening. So, and pausing doesn't mean going completely silent, too. So, really, it just means in some cases you're replacing your regular content with timely updates or resources that could help during this time of crisis. And even if it's a partner organization of yours or something that's going on in your community that might not directly affect your organization, you still want to keep that in mind. So, a simple question that you can ask yourself is, does this post feel like tone deaf right now? And if you're feeling like you wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of that post, it's best to just pause and reassess after the crisis is over. All right, we're going to go on to our next post here, our next slide. All right, let's talk about comment section management. So, whew, I'm in a couple of group chats with my friends, and sometimes they'll send me a post, and I say, I'm going straight to the comments on this one because I want to see what the people have to say. And sometimes, it's some funny stuff in the comments, but it also could be some negative things in the comments too. And, you also sometimes hear celebrities say, don't read the comments, but the comments can be very telling. So, during a crisis, people use the comment to ask questions, they share concerns, they express frustrations. It's important that you respond professionally. You must acknowledge valid concerns and provide accurate information. And so, how to handle comments. So, um, this is kind of like our to-dos all over again. You want to correct false information respectfully. You want to hide and delete only abusive or harmful contents or comments. So, depending on your social media management system, I know for Facebook, they have it where you can go in and turn on your content and comments manager. So if there are certain phrases that are used, it will block them. But if someone just says they don't agree with your stance on a issue, you cannot or you should not just go in and delete the content or the comment because it's something that you don't agree with necessarily. That could also backfire on you as well. You want to, if there's a personal concern, you want to follow up with a direct message or email. You want to thank constructive feedback. If there's someone that is giving you constructive feedback, tell them thank you. You also want to be sure to document any serious threats or comments because that could be something that might need to be turned over to the authorities. So, you want to avoid fighting in the comment sections. Don't do that because, like we talked about a couple slides ago, people like to screenshot things. So that's something you want to stay away from. You don't want to have like one comment or one reply for everything. So keep away from copying and pasting comments because if people see that you're doing that, again, it looks like there's no one manning the wheel of the ship and it's just on autopilot and you don't care about what's going on. And then you don't want to ignore genuine concerns. So, just think about it. The goal isn't to win every argument, it's to maintain trust, to show professionalism, and you want to keep that conversation constructive. Yes, and someone even said in the comments, if you work for a government entity, you also shouldn't be deleting comments for legal reasons. It can be seen as violation of freedom of speech. So yeah, keeping that in mind as well, and just making sure again that the comments aren't being abusive or threatening or harmful, and that could be like your boundary, and that's something that you might want to talk about too. What are our clear lines of communication? And some organizations even have their social media policy posted on their social media platform. So that way, if someone violates, it's clear that their comment will be removed because they have violated your policy. All right, we're going to keep it moving here to the next slide. So let's talk about crisis response by platform. So depending on what platform your organization is on, can determine, how you might want to go about responding. So, not every platform should be used the same way. Of course, with Twitter, X, you only have a certain amount of characters that you can use. So, you wouldn't want to put a Twitter response on LinkedIn where you have all the characters and all you could write paragraphs on LinkedIn, but wouldn't just want to do like a 2 or 3 sentence response because someone could look at that as being insensitive. So you want to tailor your response to your platform. Facebook is often used for longer updates. So I would say you probably could use the same response or post the same messaging on Facebook as you could LinkedIn because they're similar for longer updates. It allows you lots of space to be able to explain and answer questions. Instagram works well for concise messaging. You can use photographs also here. More people, if you're using photos or videos, those visuals can provide reassurance for you too. So if there's a story that you want to tell there, that's a good way to do it. And then, again, we just talked about X, Twitter. News spreads fast. So, it could be used great for real time updates, and also monitoring public conversation and correcting misinformation quickly. Same thing with threads. And then, like we just talked about with LinkedIn and Facebook, they are best for professional audiences, especially if you have partners or funders, stakeholders. It's where you would put more of a formal response on LinkedIn. So just, keep in mind the messaging should stay consistent. If you do have several social media platforms, the same messaging should be posted on all of them. That way you're staying consistent with your messaging. But even though you're being consistent with your messaging by posting on all the platforms, the message might sound differently based on the platform. You might have to adjust it or tweak it. So don't copy and paste. Actually take the time. And if you're using some type of AI software, you can actually say in there to chat GPT or whatever, you can have it craft the messaging based on your social media platform. So just keep that in mind. All right, so we'll keep it moving here. All right, so rebuilding trust after the crisis. So, the communication doesn't end when the immediate issue fades from attention. You can't just stop talking about it when everyone else does, because one of the most important phases happens afterwards when you have to rebuild trust. So, you want to, share your updates transparently. You want to show, if some type of corrective action was taken. You want to highlight your listening efforts and re-engage the community. And then, you can start to incorporate your normal content back in gradually. So, you might want to share update or testimonial on how things have gotten better, or show that you took feedback and you're demonstrating some type of commitment to do things better. So just keep in mind that the communications don't stop after the crisis. You have to be consistent and keep it going to show your followers that you care. As far as having a timeline to return, I saw that question there in the comments. I would just say really it's based on what the issue is. But if, for example, if you're doing a giveaway of some type on your page and you weren't able to do the giveaway because of the crisis that was taking place, you want to communicate that, and then also say, like, okay, we know we were supposed to give away book bags to the youth on this Saturday, but due to whatever, we're going to have to reschedule that. So just long as you're being honest and open about whatever it is, and you can share your timeline for if something might need to get rescheduled. But as far as your regular content, I would just say just try to start incorporating that back slowly a day or two after whatever the crisis may have been. Um, all right, so it's activity time. Many of you know the fun part about this series is we have an activity. So feel free. We're going to go over a couple different scenarios here. You can drop your responses in the chat, or if somebody wants to come off mute to talk about it, that's fine as well. So, scenario one, a post about child nutrition policy receives hundreds of angry comments accusing your organization of telling parents how to raise their kids. All right, so questions that need answers. All right, here we go. So, do we respond publicly or do we stay silent? You can drop your thought in the chat here.
We
All
respond
right,
publicly.
that's right. We are going to respond publicly to that. All right. Okay. All right. What tone should be used? Anybody want to jump in for that? All right. Factual, like that.
I'm coming off.
Gentle,
I'm coming off of
empathetic.
mute. I'm coming off of mute because
Okay, Monique.
I'm because I'm new to the social world. Okay, and so like I said, because even with texting, you don't know what the tone is when you're texting. I know now, do not use all capitals. I know that,
Yeah.
but um how do you when in these situations when you are responding and trying to stop the negativity that's happening when all we trying to do is make the children be better in our city or whatever the case may be. um how is the tone for us? Like I said, I know not to use all caps, but what is the moderate way of doing it in those platforms?
Yeah, so I would say in this situation, the best thing to do, I think, would be a recorded statement. Because if you do a recorded statement, people can hear the inflection in your voice. They can hear the sincerity. They know what your tone is that way. So, and then two, people are more apt to engage and watch a video longer than they are to just interact with text on a page. So that would be my response to that. But we've gotten a lot of comments here. Respectfully, kind, professional. These are all things that you should incorporate in your tone. And then the next thing is what facts need to be shared here. So of course, depending on whatever the issue is for this one, it's telling parents how to raise kids. I mean, I'm sure that wasn't the case. It may have come off that way, but you know, somebody put in the comments here, grateful for opinions, respectfully redirecting towards intent for post, validation of various parenting experiences. These are all really good. Um, yeah, so, and then when should leadership step in? All right.
I think
Right
just
away.
depending on the size of your organization, this is Kelly with Positive Tomorrows. I think depending on the size of your organization, I think probably right away on something that's a public one like this, just be notified. And then whether or not they need to be the one who does the post, I think it depends on the size of the organization. But I think they should be notified and made aware of it because the last thing you want is them to have someone, they're going to a meeting and someone says, "Oh man, I heard about this social media kerfuffle that you ran into," and for that leader to say, "Well, what?" and to be surprised by it, no leader likes that. So I think being made aware and let them decide if they need to jump in, and then if it's a big one, like if it's like a group of angry parents, I think having the executive director or president CEO do the actual response, so they know that this is being taken seriously by from the tip top of your organization.
That's a great response. I agree wholeheartedly with that. All right. So we'll go on to the next slide here. All right. Scenario two. All right. A social media influencer shares a post claiming your organization supports a policy that would take parenting choices away from families. The post is gaining traction and comments are increasing rapidly. All right, questions that need answers. Do you respond immediately? Let's see here. Call the influencer. Okay, Denise. Make sure you are not tagged or untag yourself. Okay. All right. That's also good as well. And I'll say this, I feel like for this one, who knows? Because there may be some opportunity when Denise said call the influencer. There could be, and it just depends. Like if it's a situation where the influencer has a podcast or something like that, there could be an opportunity for there to be a conversation about it. So, I'm really not opposed to that. That is a good suggestion there. All right. Let's see here. So yes, everyone is saying respond immediately. Hopefully the influencer can correct and share the info. This is good. Good comments here. All right. What facts need clarification? So this is kind of feeding into some of the comments that I'm seeing here. So it could be a conversation where the influencer has misinterpreted information. So I do think it's worth trying to have a conversation. Okay, someone else says review the comments and see if anyone is already on the defensive line for your organization. That is true because sometimes people are fighting for your cause in the comments. So and then it says here, future posts could help explain how policies do not take parenting choices away. That's good, Hannah. So you could do some messaging or a campaign to show that this is not how you meant it, and you can break it down and kind of let your marketing materials fight your battle for you. So that's a good one as well. Okay, who approves the message? Who is going to approve this message? So, of course, we need to take this through leadership and potentially our legal team since it is involving another influencer. So, yeah. All right. And then should partners be informed? And I would say for this, absolutely, because you just don't know what way this is going to turn. So, and this could be a situation where your partners could also help back you up as well and further affirm your messaging that you've put out. Okay. So Sarah says, yes, respond immediately and explain the purpose of your organization so that everyone, including the influencer, can have a better understanding of your organization's mission. That's good. That is this is a time where you can really get out here and talk about the mission of your organization. So it won't be misconstrued. All right. So we'll keep going here. Scenario 3. These are some good comments, y'all. All right, a parent posts a video saying your program failed their child's needs. The video is emotional and receiving thousands of shares. Oh my goodness. All right, so questions that need answers, public response or private outreach first? I feel like somebody needs to come off mute on this one for me. Who wants it? Anyone?
I I think it would be nice to privately reach out to that individual to get more clarity and understanding. And then also maybe it'll help them feel a little bit seen having that direct engagement with someone so you can hold space for them to talk through that. And then also kind of address publicly how your organization operates and maybe if there was a misalignment with how the parent received the care for the child.
That's good.
Um,
That's really good. Anybody else?
yes, I want to come off of mute. I agree with what you're saying, but if you don't know the mental status of someone who is posting who feel their child was unfairly treated or anything like that, I think the best way to do is get somebody to mediate that conversation because trying to help some people, and y'all know I'm telling the truth, sometimes can get misconstrued on, and you know if it can get misconstrued in person, it can get misconstrued especially on social media because these are just words that are being spewed out here. So we have to be really careful, like you said earlier. um really be careful on how we tread, but I say get a mediator when you're handling parents of those natures because you don't know where their mental is. So we have to be really careful with that.
That's good to keep in mind too. And like we talked about in our earlier slides as well, if any of the comments ever become threatening, it's always good to document those in case, you need them in the future. Um, all right. So, how do you discuss empathy or show empathy without discussing the private details? So, of course, like I mentioned earlier, this parent is angry about what happened, but you have to think about the child first. And, you can't go in and violate their privacy, but because the parent has made it a public issue, you still have to have empathy when handling it as well. So, um, let's see here. Okay, I love Sarah's post. You can also point out that you have a way for families to complete feedback on the website, so you can always improve your organization or your program. That's good as well. Public comment of an apology on the original video, commitment to follow up privately. I love that because at least you're acknowledging, what happened and the parents' concern and that you are going to speak with them privately about that. And let me say too, if you promise to PM or DM a person online, you better make sure you do it and follow through, because nothing's worse than a person who was mad at you for one thing and now they're mad at you for two things, which is not following through. So, and then, oh yeah, Hannah said, always be mindful that the parent can screenshot any private written outreach to post to their page as well. So private communication should be assumed that it is public. That is good. That's really good. So keep that in mind as well. All right. And then who should lead the response? Because, and I'll say this too, sometimes the social media manager may not even be aware of what has happened. So, they may not be the best person to lead this response. It could be where they provide the information to the person directly that handled the situation or someone else in leadership to take the conversation offline. So, that's something to keep in mind too. All right. Then we're going to go on to our next scenario. All right. Okay, your Facebook post about child nutrition becomes flooded with false medical claims and heated arguments between commenters. Do you disable the comments? And how do you correct the misinformation? And what moderation policies should apply? And this is something we talked about earlier. You need to have a social media policy for your organization. So that way, if you got to get down in the trenches of the comments, at least you have something that you can point them back to if you have to delete the comment or disable them. Anybody want to chime in on this from personal experience or? Okay. Courtney, yes, disable the comments according to social media policy. Yes, that's good too. All right. So yes, and yes, someone said the issues can snowball, and they can. So somebody's like, "Well, while we're at it, let me say what I'm upset about." So yeah, that's something to keep in mind there too. So, but also like we talked about, if someone you do want to be mindful of freedom of speech. So if someone is professionally giving you their thoughts or concerns, you can't necessarily just erase their comment. That could cause more trouble. So, having that social media policy together and posted on your social media accounts can help protect you in the long run. All right. So, I know we want to leave some time for question and answer here. Always remember, for the next slide, I'm sorry, Angie. Remember, people may forget the issue, but they remember how you responded. So, that might be something that you might just want to, if you are managing the social media for your organization or you know who is, that might be something to just put on a post-it note and stick on their desk or email them. People might forget the issue, but they won't forget how you responded. All right. So, of course, I have some resources that will be sent out. If you have any, if you want to learn more about crisis communication for your organization, and Angie will be sending out the slides, but we do have about 15 minutes here for question and answer. If someone has some questions about some of the slides we went over today. And also, don't forget, we host office hours on Mondays and Wednesdays. If your organization needs some one on one support or has questions about social media, they are free. So, office hours are free, no charge. So, let us know if that's something that we can help you with as well. So, any questions?
I know you said you have office hours pertaining to social media. Do you also help people with AI? to be more prepared with the AI things that are happening lately with the social media and things of that nature? Do y'all have help in that area as well?
That's something that we could discuss. I mean, of course, once we kind of get deeper into it to see what your concern is, or if you're just looking at it from a caption writing or content strategy standpoint, that is something we can help with.
Thank you. I'm like I said, I'm new to this. I'm just willing to learn. I'm trying to keep myself from getting into trouble.
Yeah, and Angie, could you drop my email address in the chat, please? Someone is asking about registering for our office hours. Yes, you can email me. Okay, someone said, is there any way to not have social media presence? So are you saying for your organization, is it possible for you all to not be on social media, Sarah? I just want to make sure I'm understanding the question.
Yeah, I mean, everything that I've heard makes me think that no, it's not possible because someone could be out there having, whatever they want to say about you. If you don't have a way to know that or communicate back, then you're a step down.
So I feel like as far as it's like social media is kind of like a double-edged sword because it's like, well, I don't say double-edged sword, but it could be used as a weapon or it could be used as a resource. And so I look at it like for your organization, you need an online presence, of course, for people to be able to learn about your organization and if they want to, if you have a certain call to action that you need, you're able to get that across on social media to drive them to your website. But it is possible to have a website without a social media presence. I mean, I've seen several organizations that just have a website and they're not on social media. But, whether you have social media or not, people can still go online and talk about your business or your organization. So I just look at having social media as a way to control the narrative and also to be able to tell your own story. So at least people can see that there are two sides to the story if there is some type of crisis that happens. Because if you don't have social media and something is happening about your organization on social media, the only way that you could go up there and talk about it is through your personal account. And then that makes you susceptible to a whole nother level of craziness that could happen directed at you personally. So now I would just say you might want to look at just having maybe a Facebook or having a LinkedIn, since those are the platforms where you are able to go up there if you needed to um, handle a crisis through communication and have a more lengthy avenue to do that. You could do that with Facebook or LinkedIn versus trying to worry about how to do it in 120 characters or less, like on Twitter. But yeah, I mean, I think you just have to really write down the pros and the cons of having a social presence online with social media versus not having it. Okay. There's another question here in the chat. How do you determine the amount of time and energy that you invest in minimizing a crisis? I think you have to also look at, I mean, is it still trending? Are people still talking about it online? Typically, most things die down after, about 3 to 4 to 5 days, assuming it's not something like where your organization has to go to court or, something like that. But if it's just if it's something that's being tried in the court of public opinion, typically after about 3 days, people move on. So, um, but yeah, that's it. Just it really depends on what the issue is, but I would say anywhere have at least a week, 3 days to a week where you can invest time and energy and resources, and someone managing and monitoring your social media pages. Okay. Are there any other questions here? Let's see. I'm kind of trying to scroll back up through the comments or anybody has any other questions? Okay, while we're thinking, Angie, I just want to go to the next slide. Okay, yep, you already got it up. Follow us on social media. Everyone can go and follow us if whatever, I think we're on most all platforms, but whatever platform you are on or would like to connect with us on, please follow us online on our social media channels. And I also have to plug our next training here. So we have three more trainings this year. We are doing July 28th. We're doing Geotargeting 101 again. This is our second time offering this training. We had such good feedback on it when we did it last fall. We're bringing it back. We're bringing it back again this year. September 24th, we'll be talking about Frame It Right, visual choices that speak to your mission. And we'll just be talking about how important the visuals you use on your social media pages will affect your success. So, online. So, that's September 24th. Then November 5th, Making Sense of Social Media Metrics 101. We will be talking about looking at the back end of your social media account and learning how to read your metrics and your insights and your engagement and all the things that you should be paying attention to as it relates to growing your social media accounts. Someone has asked for the geo-targeting registration link. Yes, Angie can drop that in the chat as well. And then we also send out emails a couple of times a month that have our upcoming events in there as well. So, yeah, we have about 5 more minutes if we have any other questions. All right. Well, it's been great. Thank you, everyone that's came today, and I will be more than happy to give you 5 minutes back. All right. Thanks, everyone, for coming today. Please complete the survey that's just been sent to you and tell us how you enjoyed the presentation today. Thank you so much again, and have a great week, everyone.